but I didn't like being on medication. And if you are on them, please read the book Anatomy of an Epidemic by Robert Whitaker and find out the truth about them, because if I had known, I would never have gone on these highly addictive drugs because they're very, very difficult to get off. And if you're not on them, please read the book before you consider going on them. I went to True North because Dr. Goldhammer said that he had some success with panic disorder using fasting. But when I got to True North, because of the medication I was on, the medical doctors would not allow me to fast. But it was there that I would meet the person that would put me on the path to eternal slimness. And that person you will hear from tomorrow, and that's Dr. Doug Lyle. I worked with Doug for about 8 months and finally got off the psychiatric medication, which was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And you know how bad my life's been up until now. They say whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But in November of that year, we finally started addressing the weight. One of the great things about my job is I get to work with really cool people like Doug, and we were doing a job together in November of 2011. And on a break, I said to him, I said, Doug, I know people probably tell you this all the time, but I swear I eat perfectly. I eat a whole food, plant-based, unprocessed diet free of sugar, oil, flour, and salt. I no longer eat chocolate. I do not eat dried fruit. All my nuts and seeds each day are carefully measured out, and I still can't lose weight. So this is what Doug said. He said he knew a guy that wrote a book that was coming out next year, and that the book would explain scientifically why I couldn't lose weight. The guy was John McDougall, and the book was The Starch Solution. Doug explained to me that I was currently eating about 30% of my calories from fat, and if I wanted to lose weight, I would need to eat about 10 to 15% of my calories from fat. So he asked me to do an experiment. He said for 30 days, just see how it goes. I thought this was silly and that he was being ridiculous, so I took his bet and I raised him. I said, okay, Doug, I'm gonna do your stupid experiment. I get home from True North from working at the Holiday Extravaganza on January 2nd. And for 90 days, I'm gonna do your silly experiment, because 90 days from January 2nd is March 22nd, which happens to be my birthday and Heather McDougall's birthday, in case you wanted to know and get us any presents. And on my birthday, I'm gonna eat a rich date nut dessert and just show you what an idiot you are. Well, for the next 12 weeks, I abstained from eating all nuts and ate potatoes instead. Anybody guess what happened? I lost weight. 1 pound a week, 12 pounds. I continued abstaining for nuts for the next 2 months, so now 5 months, 20 weeks, and I lost 20 pounds. And that's when I ran into Jeff Nelson of Veg Source. He hadn't seen me in a while. He said, my God, you look great. What are you doing? I said, well, I'm just not eating nuts. I'm eating potatoes instead. He said, well, I gotta run a story about that. Well, he ended up running 3 stories, which you can still read on his blog, vegsource.com. And apparently, they struck a nerve with a lot of people. Before I lost weight, people were criticizing me for being fat. But now, people, including medical doctors, were criticizing me for killing people by telling them not to eat nuts and accusing me of joining the ranks of the misguided and dangerous low-fat camp. Dr. McDougall, do you have any idea who they're talking about? Many people commented on the blog that there was no way I could lose that much weight simply by not eating nuts. And they actually accused me of having gastric bypass surgery and plastic surgery. Is Garth still here? Garth Davis? Can you please come and just examine me and show people that I have not had either of those? You know I'm afraid of anesthesia. I mean, believe me, if I could, I would. I continued to eat nut-free. And now it's August of 2012. And I run into Brian Wendell, the executive producer of Forks Over Knives at a fundraiser, and this photo was taken of me. I had gone from a tight size 14 to a loose size 10. I had lost 25 pounds. I was about 140. I felt good. I was happy. People told me I looked great, and I thought I was done losing weight. But I kept not eating nuts and kept eating potatoes, and by November of 2012, I had lost 33 pounds. I now weighed 132 and was a size 8. And I was able to keep that weight off for a year. Oops, sorry. These pictures were taken exactly 2 years apart at Healthy Tastes of LA. Picture on the left, eating nuts, and the picture on the right, eating potatoes. Now I want to go on record for saying that I never said nuts were unhealthy and not to eat them. But I just don't believe that they are this magical food. And I certainly don't believe that they facilitate weight loss in any way, shape, or form. If you can eat them and be happy with your weight, knock yourself out. But if you look like this, you may want to consider cutting back. That was definitely what I looked like. That was definitely what I looked like. Now, in November of 2013, I had maintained my weight loss for over a year, 132 pounds, size 8, but I still felt like I was overeating. And I truly was eating all the vegetables and potatoes that I wanted. But now that I was slimmer, it didn't feel good overeating. And really what I was overeating on was fruit, and I sometimes would eat as many as 5 bananas a day. So I talked to Doug about it, and he said, "You're not eating enough starch." And I said, "But Doug, I swear, I'm really eating all the potatoes that I can." And he said, "Well, why aren't you eating any other starch?" Old beliefs die hard. And I said, "Because carbs make you fat." Now, I figured somehow magically potatoes were able to bypass this law, but that I really believe that carbs, this is what I was taught, this is what I believe, this is what my family believed. And so what Doug said to me is that I want you to do an experiment. I was scheduled to work at True North for 5 weeks. Now they serve the same kind of diet at True North is here. It's a low-fat, starch-based diet. And at breakfast they serve oats that either sweetened with fruits or a plain made with water. They serve all kinds of delicious grains like black rice, red rice, brown rice, and wild rice at lunch and dinner. Now, Doug was right about the last experiment, so I decided to trust him. And he said, "I want you to eat all the grains you want the 5 weeks you're at True North." And he said, "What I think is going to happen is this." He said, "Either your weight is going to stay the same, or you'll gain maybe a pound." So for the next 5 weeks, I ate rice with abandon. Can anybody guess what happened next? I lost weight. In 5 weeks of stuffing my pie hole with rice, I lost another 5 pounds. And now I was down to 127 pounds in a size 6. And I love Doug, but the problem is every time I do an experiment, it costs me money because I have to buy new clothes. I simply could not believe what was happening. So I decided to run an experiment of my own. And I wanted to test out the hypothesis made by Dr. McDougall 40 years ago. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. One day at True North, Chef Bravo made my favorite meal, the scored potatoes. And by the way, these earrings were also made by Chef Bravo. He takes organic Yukon Gold potatoes and cuts slits in them, seasons them perfectly, and bakes them to perfection. So you have these crispy potatoes that taste like potato skins. And with it is served guacamole, full-fat guacamole. Now, True North is a low-fat, starch-based diet, and so avocado rarely appears on the menu there, maybe once a month. But when the patients saw these tubs of avocado, they were literally filling half their dinner plates with avocado. Now, Dr. Goldhammer doesn't monitor your food there, but that day when he gave his lecture, he casually said, "Does anybody know what a serving of avocado is?" And no one raised their hand. And he said, "It's 2 tablespoons. And I raised my hand and I said, "Per chip?" He said, "No, per day." I lived next door to Trader Joe's, and when I got home from True North, I looked at a package of commercial guacamole, and sure enough, it said that a serving was 2 tablespoons. Now, it wasn't like I was obsessively eating avocado, but I wasn't avoiding it either. I would have a couple of times brown rice avocado sushi, a couple times per week. I would put a slice of avocado here and there on my salad, or I would take avocado and mix it with peas or beans to make a lower fat topping for my potatoes. I decided to stop eating avocado for a month and see what would happen. Can anybody guess? I lost 3 pounds, and now I was down to 124 pounds. So I decided to run one more experiment, but this time I contacted Dr. McDougall first. I was still eating seeds because I was led to believe that you needed to eat flax seeds, chia seeds, or hemp seeds every single day to get your essential omega-3 fatty acids. And I was still eating a little bit of tahini on my greens because I was told that you don't absorb the carotenoids in your greens without some fat. Now, I know we have a lot of doctors here today. How many of you have ever hospitalized a patient for poor carotenoid absorption? So I wrote Dr. McDougall and I said, are you sure it's okay? Is it really safe to really eat a diet with no added fat? And in his usual style, he emailed me back within 7 seconds with one word: yes. So I decided to go a month without eating any seeds of any kind. And can you guess what happened? I lost weight, 3 more pounds. Now I was down to 121 pounds in a size I had never worn before, a size 4. The first time that I bought a piece of clothing with a size small, the label was on the outside, and I left it there for a whole month because I couldn't believe it. In case anybody is worried, I did have my omega-3 fatty acid levels checked, and they are fine. And just to be safe, I eat a green called purslane, which is the highest source of omega-3 fatty acids, much higher in omega-3 fatty acids than either nuts or seeds. So I just wanted to go on purslane, which is the highest. If anybody is worried, I did have my omega-3 fatty acid levels checked, and they are fine. And just to be safe, I eat a green called purslane, which is the highest source of omega-3 fatty acids, much higher in omega-3 called purslane, which is the fine. And just to be safe, I eat a green called purslane, which is the highest source of omega-3 fatty acids, much higher in omega-3 fatty acids than either nuts or seeds. So I just wanted to go on record to say that Dr. McDougall was right. He said he wanted this on his epitaph, but it was much cheaper to put it on an apron. Okay. Oh, thank you. That's so kind. Many people, including some healthcare professionals, have warned me that eating a low-fat diet and recommending it to my clients is extreme. But as John Irving says, good habits are worth being fanatical about. It has taken me over 50 years of doing just 3 fatty acids, which is the highest source of omega-3 fatty acids, much higher in omega-3 fatty acids than either nuts or seeds. So I just wanted to go on record to say that Dr. McDougall was right. He said he wanted this on his epitaph, but it was much cheaper to put it on an apron. Okay. Oh, thank you. That's so kind. Many people, including some healthcare professionals, have warned me that eating a low-fat diet and recommending it to my clients is extreme. But as John Irving says, good habits are worth being fanatical about. It has taken me over 50 years of doing everything wrong to finally learn the secret of ultimate weight loss and become thin. But luckily for you guys, there's a quicker way. You see, 20 years ago, there was actually a book written that explained everything I did. But the sad thing is that when my mother died, I found this book on her bookshelf. And she had never read it. And unfortunately, either did I until I lost weight. I've only been thin for 3 years now. I'm what you might call the nouveau thin. But the best part is now I get to help people attain the health and the body they deserve. Using the McDougall program for maximum weight loss and my other favorite book, The Pleasure Trap, as the foundation, plus everything I have learned from the leading experts in food addiction, I've created the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, which includes ongoing group support. We have about 700 people now doing Ultimate Weight Loss. And here are pictures of some of them as they undergo their transformation. If any of you would like to join me in becoming a skinny bitch or bastard, all you have to do is eat a low-fat, starch-based diet. That's so important what I just said, to eat a low-fat, starch-based diet, that I wrote a little song so that you would always remember, which I dedicate to Dr. McDougall. I'm an eater of potatoes. I eat potatoes every day. They're the reason that I am so trim, and this is what I get to weigh. Hey, 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 John McDougall has a plan based on carbohydrates. If you eat them, you'll be thin and won't have ass or thigh weight. John McDougall, he's the man. He's as smart as Play-Doh. Eating starch will make you thin. Just eat a damn potato.
Still got it. Wow, I really fucked up. Good to go.
That's right. I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to answer them.
Just like an interrogation.
Just like that. But you've buttered me up because you brought these amazing gifts.
Yeah,
Look at
well,
this.
you know.
How do I even
Oh,
open
just
this?
the little latches at the
Right,
side.
so this insane cake.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What is in this?
So it's, well, good stuff. It's obviously vegan. It's German chocolate cake. I used to be the pastry chef at Sante for 5 years on La
Right.
Brea. So even though it's looks decadent, and it is, I don't use oil. I don't use sugar, at least not refined sugar. It's all made with dates, and there's no salt, and it's pretty darn good, actually.
It looks pretty amazing.
Yeah, I
So-
think you'll like it. I want you to like it as much as... Well, the thing that stood out for me, Rich, most in your book that I remember the most is when you talked about when you detoxed and you ate your first blueberry, and it was like the best blueberry ever.
Right.
I hope this is like the best cake ever for you.
I think this might exceed the taste of a simple blueberry, but that's amazing. So I should refrigerate this.
Yeah, at some point refrigerate it. It'll be fine now, though.
And then you also brought me this. What is this?
That's my Rockin' Nut Crunch. That was actually the first product I created out of culinary school, and again, it's just nuts, seeds, and fruit. That's it.
Looks amazing.
It's good. It's good for athletes because I know athletes
Yeah.
need more concentrated calories.
I'm not going to eat it now because I'll be chewing on my gums.
It'll be
if I do
very
that, but I'll
noisy,
put that there.
actually.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's great to see you.
Thank you.
We are back here again. You were one of the original old guard on the podcast. I think it was
Yeah.
episode 50 something,
Wow, yeah.
53 or something like
It was
that, back in
great.
like 2013.
It
I
was
think.
a while back. It was
Yes.
amazing. Thank you for having me
Yes,
back.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk to you. And I think the best way to kick it off is to kind of share a little bit about your story. I mean, I know we dug into that pretty deeply the first time you were on, but the show has grown quite a bit since
Yeah.
then. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening who were not aware that you were on the show.
That's right. Even
initially. And your story's great. I mean, it's so empowering and inspirational, and your transformation is
Thank you.
really something else. So
Thanks.
So tell me about that.
Okay, so where should I begin? Born in 1960 in Chicago to a morbidly obese mother and a normal weight father, and you probably know that when your parents are obese or overweight, you're more chance of becoming that. And so I got fat when I was 5 years old, and I lived in Chicago, and I don't know if you remember because I'm a little bit older than you, maybe a lot. Growing up,
You don't look at that.
well, thank you. I'll be 58 in 3 weeks. But in the 1960s, there weren't a lot of fat kids. And so when people tell me now, you can't understand what it's like to be fat because they see me as a slender person, I was fat before it was socially acceptable to be fat. Nobody was fat. There was one fat kid in every grade. In 1960 to 1970, that was me. So maybe I wasn't as fat by today's standards, but when you're the fattest one, you're still the fattest one. And there's a lot of things that go on with that are not comfortable growing up. Like, for instance, you can't buy your clothes at a regular store because they don't fit. And so
Became fat at 5, but by 11, I was actually obese. I weighed 160 pounds, and I'm 5'6".
At 11.
At 11, but I wasn't 5'6" then. I wasn't even 5 feet then. So I was obese. And, you know, it's not fun. And it doesn't matter how fat you are. It's not fun if you're fat and you're uncomfortable in your own body. So I didn't realize that I was actually suffering from what I know today to be a food addiction, an addiction to refined foods, specifically things like sugar and flour. And I continued to become fatter and fatter. I got into about the 200-pound range in my 20s, but I was vegan. This is the weird thing. At the age of 17, when I was a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania, I was studying to be a veterinarian, and instead I became a vegetarian because the first day on the job I was handed a tank of live salamanders, and the doctor said to cut their heads off. I said, why? He goes, well, we're doing protein lens regeneration experiments, but I was vegan. To refined foods, specifically things like sugar and flour. And I continued to become fatter and fatter. I got into about the 200-pound range in my 20s, but I was vegan. This is the weird thing. At the age of 17, when I was a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania, I was studying to be a veterinarian, and instead I became a vegetarian because the first day on the job I was handed a tank of live salamanders, and the doctor said to cut their heads off. And I said, why? He goes, well, we're doing protein lens regeneration experiments in the amphibian, and I just need their eyes. Well, I was on scholarship, and there's something about you see a guy in a white coat, and I cut off one head, and I was like, terrible. I started vomiting. I went to the student health center, and I said I would never eat another animal again or harm one or wear one. So I became a vegan on September 1st, 1977.
Yeah, not cool back then.
Yeah, that was 40 years.
And I imagine not easy either.
No, oh, we didn't even have powdered soy milk in 1977. Now you can go to any town anywhere in the United States, 99-cent store, Walmart, and you get plant milk in probably 10 different varieties, oat and soy and rice. There was nothing. Well, there wasn't nothing. There was whole natural food like fruits, vegetables, and whole grains and legumes and nuts and seeds, but that's not what I ate. Right. I was a sugar addict. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, starting every day with a Coke Slurpee with 8 pumps of vanilla syrup and having a Dr. Pepper Big Gulp 48 ounces every day at lunch, not exactly a health-promoting diet.
Right.
So I did this every day till I was about 43 years old. 26 years of my veganism was basically eating candies, cakes, cookies, pies, and ice cream. And so of course I became,
During that
obese.
period of time, were you trying to resolve this issue? Like, were you going on diets and trying to restrict your calories and doing all the things that, you know, we do?
Yeah, so I tried this one diet in my teens, which was called anorexia, where I didn't eat, and I actually ended up
effective for a while.
Oh, it works beautifully. It's just not it's not sustainable, you know. So I tried that in my teens and ended up hospitalized, and so that wasn't good because there were so many complications. My hair fell out, my nails, you know, I developed an enlarged liver. That wasn't very fun. But the thing about anorexia is the minute I started eating again, I didn't start eating the way that you eat and I eat now. I went back right away to the junk food, and then I gained even more weight. And actually what a lot of people don't know, and they'll find out in my book, is I actually attempted suicide because then I became bulimic, and in a lot of ways that was worse than anorexia for me because I didn't like being anorexic, but it wasn't that hard. So in other words, to be anorexic, all I had to do was not eat. But bulimia required extraordinary efforts because the binging and the purging and the laxative use and the over-exercising. Bulimia was a 24-hour job. So was anorexia, but anorexia, you're basically cold and tired. You don't have any energy to do anything. And so that's when I attempted suicide at the age of 19. And I never told anybody this, not even my husband, till about 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I read that in your book, and I was like, wait, I don't think I knew that. Like, we didn't talk about that last time, and I'd never heard you speak about that.
It's not something I was really comfortable talking about, but then when I started, when I spoke at the McDougall conference, he insisted I tell my life story, and I didn't think it was fair to leave that out, especially since coming out as a food addict or food addict in recovery now, so many people have written me saying that they've contemplated suicide and attempted suicide because of their discordant relationship with food. So I figure, well, I'll tell people. Yeah, it was a dark period in my life.
Yeah, so walk me through that a little bit. I mean, you know, I mean, I can't imagine the level of despair.
Yeah,
you must have been in.
yeah, it's like I remember the date, April 1st. You know, and it's funny because I don't usually think about this, but it's interesting because I do personally believe in God. I know a lot of people don't, but that's the only explanation for why I'm alive because I didn't tell anybody. I didn't even leave a note, and I had stolen. I never had to talk about this. My grandfather was a medical doctor, and I stole medicine from his house. My grandmother was diabetic. She was on a lot of stuff, and I just stole.
What kind of stuff?
I just all my grandmother's pills. I don't remember the names, but my grandmother took a lot of pain medication, so I know it was in that realm of pain medication. And I never drank alcohol, but I remember drinking a bunch of alcohol and taking a bunch of these pills. And I remember it was Passover, and I didn't go because I had planned to kill myself that night. And what was really interesting is my grandfather, who I had stolen the pills from, he showed up at my door. He said, I don't know why I've been directed to come here. And then they take you in an ambulance and they pump your stomach. And then you end up in a mental hospital, which is like worse because and you have the mental. It was not fun, I'll tell you.
How old were you then?
I was 20. Yeah.
So, do you think that looking back on it now with some perspective, that was it a tried and true suicide attempt or a cry for help?
No, it was tried. I mean, it was it was tried and true because I didn't tell anybody, I didn't leave a note, and I took a lot of pills. I mean, I don't know if it would have worked, but there was a lot.
You were still alert when your grandfather?
No, I don't. I only remember vaguely a shadow of him saying that, I just felt like I had to come here because you didn't show up to the Passover Seder, and that.
So I want to get into like how you recover from something like that and the path forward, but I don't want to move too far away from this subject of food addiction.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to just brush over
Sure.
that. I think it's a super important topic that deserves a little bit more of a deep dive. And I think there's a lot of confusion about it. What does it actually mean? Is it even really a thing? So describe to me your perspective on food addiction.
It's true because it is not really a thing yet to many people because it's not in the DSM. So a lot of doctors won't acknowledge it, even some of the plant-based doctors. So to me, what food addiction means is refined food addiction. You're not really addicted to food and eating. If you don't eat, you'll die. But there are particular foods, for specifically foods like sugar and flour, that are very highly refined carbohydrates that certain people are very vulnerable to the effect of, so that when we ingest them, they have a more drug-like behavior than food-like behavior. And as a recovering alcoholic, I'm sure you understand that there are people out there that can drink alcohol in varying amounts and not become an alcoholic.
God bless them.
Right, but there's certain people like you, one drink, one drunk. And there's people in the world, like my husband, that can eat sugar and flour in almost any amount and be slender and healthy and not have cravings. But there's other people that even a little bit, like maybe if it's the fifth ingredient in a barbecue sauce, will set us off, and will set off the phenomenon known as craving, where all we do is want more and more and more. It sets off that insatiable desire for more.
Yeah, it's insidious for those that suffer from it. And I think, I started doing a lot of deep thinking about addiction and what it is specifically and what it's not. And I really think that we need to have a broader conversation and expand the definition of what we mean when we talk about addiction. It's not just drunks and people that can keep a needle out of their arm. I think on some level, I think all of humanity suffers to some extent from some type of compulsive behavior or thought pattern or substance. And food is certainly a part of that, but it is a spectrum, right? And so where do you fall on that spectrum?
That's why it's so hard, I think, because it's a spectrum, and because some people can have a little, and there are people that identify with the title of food addict, but maybe can have the barbecue sauce as a condiment with the fifth ingredient. And because it exists on a continuum, it's so hard to quantify. Whereas like with high blood pressure, we can say, if your blood pressure is this, you're hypertensive. And there's no real direct test for it.
Yeah, and the substance is, whether it's food or a drug, is the catalyst. The condition really has to do with your mental, emotional, and physiological state. There's a certain person who's going to be sensitive, like you said, to sugar or alcohol or cocaine, and it's going to activate them in a way that it isn't for somebody else. But ultimately, the addiction lies within the soul, really. I mean, you're trying to alter your state, your state of mind, your physiological state, and you're reaching out often, mostly compulsively, but often even unconsciously, to medicate yourself in some way because you have some level of discomfort.
Right.
And sugar hits the spot for a lot of people, but it's about getting at the root of what is activating that. And something that I thought was really cool and interesting about your book is that you get into the emotional trauma that you suffered as a young person. And, I think that there is a direct nexus between the trauma that we suffer as young people and how we kind of navigate the world as adults. And I've explored this at length on the podcast. I had Gabor Mate on the show.
Yeah,
he's
great.
all about that.
I love
right?
him.
And so to hear you speak to that, I think is really powerful. So walk me through kind of what that experience was like as a young person, because, you did have some challenges as a kid.
I thank you for asking that. First, I want to agree with what you say about how addiction often starts because of something like that trying to medicate, feel better, especially as a child when you're helpless. You're not, you can't go to a bar and have a drink or things like that. But I think that often it continues because now it is an addiction. Does that make sense? So like when I was 43 years old and happily married, I was still using, not because of what happened to me when I was 5, but because I was really addicted.
There was so much energy behind that habit at that point, right?
Yeah. So, my father was psychotic. It was not his fault. He was kicked in the head by a horse when I was little.
Like psychotic, like clinically psychotic.
Yes, like he was, and I didn't know him before the accident, but the people that did, like my grandmother said, that changed him. Now today, he would have been a neurologist, there would have been MRIs, but my dad had a gash in his head from being kicked in the head by a horse, and that changed his behavior. So he was violent and he was abusive to pretty much everybody in my family. He never physically hit me and my sister, which was interesting. But in a way, I had survivor's guilt because he hit my brothers and my mom. But the worst was watching him torture my dog. And it's interesting because I think the reason I became vegan so young is because I couldn't protect my dog from my dad. And he would just brutally beat. I love my dogs. I love dogs. I saw a dog here. I love dogs so much. And that was my best friend, Snoopy. And Snoopy was an epileptic, and he would have seizures, and my dad would just beat my dog. And I couldn't do anything about it. And that was the worst thing is like, my brothers were older, my mom was an adult. Not that it's good to watch humans being beat either, but like when it's a defenseless animal like that, and I hated him so much and like I wanted to kill him, but like when you're 5, what do you do, And so, you have cookies.
Do you think your dad's rage or anger outbursts are what was that an expression of? Was it just a neurological tweak because of the injury that he sustained? Or?
I didn't know him before. I don't know if I should even say this because then people think I'm really crazy, but I did contact a medium that could talk to him since he's
I'm
dead.
all about mediums.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so I finally did a few years ago, and part of it was his personality, but the thing is the personality plus the injury just made a bad situation worse.
And what about your mom?
My mom was a helpless victim. She was, she had 4 kids, so it's not like she didn't have a job, so it's not like she could leave, and I don't think there were shelters back then. But finally, she got the courage to leave. They were married, a long time. I think it was when I was 11. Finally, when he brutally attacked her, she finally, my grandparent,